What do you want for Christmas?
A new train. I want painting stuff. Blocks of Legos.
Hoverboard.
I want walkie-talkies. I want dolls. I want a dinosaur. I want a camera. And new cars.
Cyclone helmet.
Squirrel.
I want rollerblades.
Dinosaur. Peppa. A visit to see Jefferson. Place for the Vikings. Minigun backpack. A bracelet kit. A Barbie dream house. Barbie camper.
A chandelier. From my room.
A bracelet kit.
Both want a bracelet kit?
Yeah.
I just want to give thanks to God for giving me this family and giving me this life to spend time in this world.
Well, Merry Christmas, Hope. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for taking time to come and join us in worship. You see that video of these kids from Hope that were interviewed asking what do they want for Christmas. And I know that the most important answer was the one that was given at the end. And that kid, boy, he's got a gift. And I'm sure his parents are incredibly proud. But there's also a part of me that the kid who wants the Jefferson to go see Jefferson, the school, the Vikings thing, like I'm pretty excited about that one too. I think he should get a raise for volunteering here at Hope. But I wonder, for you, what do you want for Christmas this year? What's on your Christmas list? What are you wishing for? Look, there's a reality that sometimes I think we come to worship and we kind of have to like minimize the idea that we have things on our wish list. Like we need to apologize that there's something that we want because we come into church and we're like, well, it only can be Jesus. Like if the person asks me what do I want for Christmas, I can't say that there's anything that I want apart from Jesus. No, that's not the message you're going to hear. In fact, it's because of Jesus that we do have the lists. And trust me, I am somebody who loves the lists. I'd love to tell you that in our house, Christmas is something that we anticipate like months in advance because of our kids. But really, it's because of me. Like literally early this week, I had to ask my wife a couple times. I'm like, hey, the kids want to know if we can open a present early. And she's like, do the kids really want? And then she asks our kids, and they're old enough to say, we didn't say that. Dad said that. And now I'm trying to get smarter than my wife. I'm like, hey, guys, don't tell mom that I told you, but could you ask her if we could open gifts early? I mean, just yesterday, I'm like, could they just open one? And she's like, do you want them to open one, or do you just want to open one? I'm like, can it be both? Like, can it be both? Like, what? But in reality, what is it for you? Like, if you could have just one, you had to pick one gift. This is the gift that I want this year. I remember when I was in second grade, it was like prime He-Man, Masters of the Universe time. So for me, when I was a second grader, all I wanted was a little Castle Grayskull. That's all I wanted. That was the thing on my list. And if I could get the Castle Grayskull, then my life was going to be complete, because that's kind of the way we treat it sometimes, isn't it? If I can just get this one thing, then my life is going to be complete. But I got to be honest with you. I haven't played with my Castle Grayskull in at least 2 months. Like, it's been that long. No, I honestly, like, I probably played with it for like a week afterwards, maybe 2. Maybe when I had friends that came over and they didn't have a Castle Grayskull or a Skeletor or He-Man, maybe we would dig it out. But chances are more likely that after I'd gotten done playing with it just a little bit, it went on the shelf. And it didn't mean that it wasn't a great present. It was a wonderful present. Super grateful that I was able to get it. But of all the things that we wrap and we put under the tree, no matter how great those things are, important that those things are, do they last? Can they complete us? Can they give us what it is that our souls, like, they really crave, what they really truly desire? And you say, well, it's not the gifts that really are important. It's the experiences. And I'd echo that. We tell our kids all the time, it's people over things. It's experiences over stuff. And just a week ago today, I had the opportunity to have quite an experience. I'm a huge Minnesota Vikings fan, huge Minnesota sports fan, and it's been quite a season for us. And it was about 2 weeks ago that a good friend of mine, his family has had season tickets for the Vikings for as long as they could remember. And he called and he said, hey, they switched the game from a Sunday game. They flexed it to a Saturday at noon game. We can't use the tickets. Do you guys want to go? And it was like the perfect opportunity because I wasn't preaching that weekend, and it was a Saturday game, so I could get home, be at church on Sunday. Our kids didn't have activities this weekend, and so we went to Minneapolis. And for those of you who haven't been enlightened, it was quite a game last week. Now, it didn't start off very good. It started off terribly. The Vikings were playing the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, they haven't been having a good season. The Vikings are this team that even today, they won like at the last second on a 61-yard field goal. Like, it's just been one of those years. They're an incredible team. Their point differential is only like +5 on the year. Like, they're the worst 12-win team of all time. It's crazy. But going into last week, everyone's like, you're going to the perfect game because they're going to blow the Colts out. At halftime, it was 33-0. We were losing. Like, it was awful. It was terrible. And so it was at halftime, we're like, well, we might as well stick around for a little bit. My parents had the opportunity to come with us. The guy who gave us tickets, he called on Thursday before the Saturday game. He said, hey, I just came upon 2 more tickets. Do you think your mom and dad would want to go? And I'm like, absolutely. So we're like, hey, they're there. It was my mom's first Vikings game ever. So we're like, hey, we can't leave early, but I wanted to. I was sick of losing. So then the second half started, and the Vikings got the ball first, and we're like, okay, if the Vikings don't score, we're going to leave. And they didn't score. They didn't gain a yard on that first drive in the second half. And so me, because I'm so patient, and my love for the team is just non-conditional, I'm like, I just want to go home. Just want to go home. My wife, Bridget, was like, just wait. And then, I mean, my goodness. They came down from 33-0. They won it in overtime. It was one of the most exhilarating games I've ever been to. Had the opportunity to go Game 7 of the 1987 World Series where the Twins won the World Series. This game, just the experience of it, was just second to only that. And it was one of those experiences that all of us, as we were driving home, were like, we will never forget this. And my kids are like, can't wait for school on Monday. We're going to wear all of our Viking stuff. And it was really great on Sunday, and it was really great on Monday. But on Tuesday, kind of the page had started to turn. And by Wednesday and Thursday, life somehow, no matter how much we didn't want it to, had kind of moved past it. And so it's not the things that are enough. And it's not even really the experiences that are enough, no matter how great they are. And we find ourselves this Christmas, and chances are, not everybody, but there are some of us that feel like that Christmas has been stolen from us, from you. Kind of like Marv and Harry, the thieves of Christmas. And I wonder what your thief is. For Kevin, it was these two. But I'd venture to guess that it's something different for you. Maybe for you, it's the cold that has been just so incredibly cold. Like, this isn't normal cold. I heard that it's nicer today, but this isn't normal cold. I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and there are people who are like, well, you should be used to this. And it's like, no, why do you think I left? This is awful. Maybe you saw this yesterday. There was a sportscaster from Waterloo. Anybody see this? If you haven't seen it, this guy was having Christmas stolen from him. Take a look.
Mark, how you feeling out there?
Again, the same way I felt about 8 minutes ago when you asked me that same question, right? I normally do sports. Everything is canceled here for the next couple of days. So what better time to ask the sports guy to come in about 5 hours earlier than he would normally wake up, go stand out in the wind and the snow and the cold and tell other people not to do the same. I didn't even realize that there was a 3:30 also in the morning until today. It's absolutely fantastic, Ryan. You know, I'm used to these evening shows that are only 30 minutes long, and generally on those shows I'm inside. So this is a really long show. Tune in for the next couple hours to watch me progressively get crankier and crankier. How do I get that Storm Chaser 7 duty? I feel like Clint got the better end of that deal. You know, that thing's heated. The outdoors currently is not heated. Well, I'll tell you what, Ryan, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is that I can still feel my face right now. The bad news is I kind of wish I couldn't. Can I go back to my regular job? I'm pretty sure, Ryan, that you guys added an extra hour to this show just because somebody likes torturing me, because compared to 2.5 hours ago, it is just getting colder and colder. Live in Waterloo for the last time this morning, thankfully, I'm Mark Woodley, News 7 KWWL.
That's gone viral. Right here in Iowa, that's gone viral. Like literally, the weather for him had just stolen all the joy from him. And sure, he was having fun, and it was really funny. But I think underneath it, a lot of us know what it feels like to have the joy of the season stolen from us. And I wonder what the thief is for you. Maybe it's that you feel lost. You don't feel as if maybe you know what direction it is that you're supposed to take. Maybe there was quite a bit of time in your life that it felt like, you know, everything was just going exactly the way that it was supposed to go until it wasn't. And everything made sense to you, and everything was going the way that you thought it should go, and you knew how to respond to things when you knew how things were supposed to go, and now you don't even know what end is up anymore. Life's gotten turned upside down in such a way that it leaves you lost and confused and really searching. Or maybe it's not even the events of life that feels like it's caused you to search and caused you to feel lost. Maybe it's just the fact that you've looked everywhere else and nothing has given you direction. Think about the wise men. Sure, they come into the picture after Jesus is born, but it's the wise men who are the ones who didn't have questions. They were the ones who had answers. But it was the wise men who had all the power and the prestige and the intellect and the accolades. But it just wasn't enough. And even though they had so much, there was still this reality that inside of them it still felt a little bit hollow. And I think we know what that feels like. Maybe thinking the next relationship, or maybe thinking that the next job, or the next stage, or the next plateau, or whatever the next thing is for you, that maybe that's going to be enough. And you get there, and you still feel lost. Maybe it's the fact that you don't feel lost. Maybe you just feel exhausted, tired, sick, weary. It's the year after that Castle Grayskull Christmas of mine. I think I was more sick than I'd ever been in my life. Like, we're talking sick. My brother and sister are older enough of me than if my parents would have gone to church that year, they would have been able to take care of me. Dad was a pastor, and so that Christmas Eve was spent at church. But this year, I was sick enough that my mom, she didn't even want to leave me. Like, the point of you're starting to ask the question, at what point do we take this person in? And I'm the kid who was the youngest who made Christmas miserable for my siblings because I just couldn't contain my excitement. And every year at Christmas, we'd have to go through all of the things before we'd open up presents. How many kids in this room are just waiting for this service to get done so you can finally open presents? That was me. And I see all your hands. and tell your parents to speed on the way home. But this year, I missed it because I was sick. Get time for us to open up presents, and I was sleeping on the couch, and I was sleeping in my mom's lap, and it would get to be my time, and they'd have to kind of rouse me and wake me just a little bit, and they'd open up my presents for me, and they would show me the present, and I would look at them and I'd say, well, it's just what I always wanted. And I think a lot of them were like, I wish he'd be sick every year. But I was so exhausted and tired and weary that I didn't even recognize what it is that I had been given. And sometimes I wonder, and maybe you do too, if life could just slow down. If we could somehow get some margin back. Oh, it's supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, but it feels as if we continue to fill our lives full of so many things that we don't even have time to breathe. And so many of us are like, we would love to be able to enjoy this for everything that it's worth. But I'm just trying to get through today. Tired, exhausted, and I'm sick of it. In the Bible readings you heard at the beginning of the service, there's a passage taken from one of the most hope-filled passages of the Old Testament. Isaiah chapter 9, the people who walked in darkness would see a great light. But no matter how hope-filled that is, there has to be context to it. And God was speaking through the prophet Isaiah, and just before God had said that to the people through the prophet Isaiah, he had encountered people who were just weary, who were just wishing that somehow they could just catch a break. That everything that they knew and everything that they had, it felt like that it had been stripped from them. And they had to work so hard just to feel as if they could catch up. Can you relate? Or maybe it's not the fact that you're tired. Maybe it's the fact that you're in a season of your life where you're just hurting. And I wonder why it is that it's so hard for us to admit that sometimes. Like when people ask us how we're doing, it's so easy and it's so tempting just to always say, well, I'm fine. And if somebody would ever ask, no, how are you really doing? We'd almost take offense to it. Like somehow if they were to see something in us that wasn't fine, that somehow that would be like rude of them to really care. But here's the thing. Statistically speaking, there's over 2/3 of the people in the United States right now that are dealing with significant anxiety and or depression. 3 years ago, before the world got turned upside down, politically, relationally, medically due to COVID, it was about 1/4 or 1/3. Look, that's not good. And if that's you, it's not your fault. And it's okay to not be okay. Maybe it's not anxiety or depression for you. Maybe it's the fact that this is a Christmas where you're celebrating it for the first time without somebody that you love. I was talking to a woman from her church just last week. This will be the first Christmas that she's had in over 50 years without her husband. So Jeremy, if I'm going to be honest with you, I wish I had a remote control that I could just fast forward through the next few weeks. I think the psalmist, Psalm 55. The psalmist acknowledges, not in a rhetorical way, but in an honest way. Oh, that if I would be a bird who had wings and I could just fly away. I could just get out of this mess that it feels that my life's become. Emotionally, relationally, physically. That's why this story is so important. Almost definitely the story of Christmas, but the story of God with his people. Couldn't be more excited that starting next week, we're going to kick off a new theme for this next year at Hope called the Whole Holy Bible in a Year. Where over the course of the next year, we're going to have the opportunity as a church to read through the entirety of Scripture. As you walk out, if you're here in person, as you walk out of this room, you're going to be given a bookmark that will help you to read through God's Word. We're going to do it as a family. We're going to do it as a church. There'll be 2 tracks, so those of you who say, you know what, I don't know if I could do the whole thing, there's one track where it's just going through the New Testament. We're going to be preaching on that every single weekend throughout the course of the year. But there'll also be a secondary track that you can do the whole Holy Bible, the Old, New Testament and the Old Testament, and read them together. And it's going to be incredible, because what you're going to see, what you can't miss, what's impossible not to realize is that this story isn't a story that's absent of our lives, that this story isn't a story that's distant from our lives, that when we look at the story, especially the story of Christmas, we can see ourselves in the story. It was Charles Schulz who wrote the comic strip Peanuts. Incredible entertainer, incredible writer, but also a person of incredible faith. Who would use his comic strips, who would use the shows that he would develop as a way to give people a message of hope. And he'd use all the cute characters as a way to tell a story in the Charlie Brown Christmas story. It's Charlie Brown who's searching because he's lost, he's tired, and he's hurt. And he's trying to find what it is that's going to give himself life, and he thinks that it's going to be the pageant of Christmas, but even that doesn't seem to give him what it is that he's looking for. So then Charlie Brown calls out, "Can anybody just tell me what this whole thing is for?" And maybe that's some of you as you were coming to church tonight. You came along with somebody else because they asked you to, or you came along with somebody else because they forced you to. And you just want to know what's this whole thing about? And along comes Linus, who doesn't just talk to Charlie Brown. He speaks to the depths of his soul. And he doesn't give him good advice. He gives him the good news, the gospel. Take a look.
I guess you were right, Linus. I shouldn't have picked this little tree. Everything I do turns into a disaster. I guess I really don't know what Christmas is all about. Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about?
Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about. Lights, please. And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them. And the glory of the Lord shone round about them. And they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not. For behold, I bring you tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God, and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
So what does that have to do with me? Story that's so ancient, a story that's so old, what does that have to do with me? First, and don't miss this, that the darkness doesn't last. No matter how dark the dark can feel, it doesn't last. It doesn't have the power to. I remember when I was little, my parents had a lake cabin, and so my family went there all the time. And there was a time where all of us, our next door neighbors, were our best friends, and so we all had been down swimming all day. So we left all of our swimming stuff at the end of our neighbor's dock, and it was the end of the day, and we all knew that at the end of the day, you had to get everything from the dock, and you had to get it back up to the cabin. And so now it was time for us to go get it done. But we hadn't done it, and it was completely dark out, and nobody wanted to go down to the water because that's where all the monsters hung out. And so my parents said, you guys have to go down there, and you have to get it. And none of us volunteered to do it. And then I did it because I was the youngest. And I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it because my brother said to me, hey, I'll time you. Well, then at that point, I mean, honestly, what choice did I have? I mean, there was records to be had. I mean, like, at that point, I was scared out of my mind. He's like, I'll time you. I'm like, all right, let me tie my shoes. Let me get my flip-flops on, like all of that stuff. And I knew as I was going down to get to our neighbor's dock that there was two ways that I could go. I could go the safe route. And the safe route would be going down our path, where it was all lit up, and I would get to the beach. And once I would get to the beach, I'd run about the 35 yards from our dock to our neighbor's dock, and then I could get there, and I could retrace my steps, and my whole way would be lit up. But the problem is that would take some time. And I was racing the clock. So the second option I had was halfway down our path, I could cut through the middle of the woods. It was a shortcut that we would use in the middle of the day. But nobody would ever take the shortcut through the woods, through the wilderness in the middle of the night. But this fateful night, I decided to do so. And as I was running down to the water, somebody decided that they were going to play a trick on me. And I was in the middle of the woods, and somebody cut out every light. And the darkness was so thick, it was like somebody had thrown a blanket over my head. And I was terrified. And in my terror, I lost all sense of logic. Isn't it crazy how that happens? And I started to wonder, even logically, knowing that there was going to be one who would come for me, wondering if I would ever make it out of the place that I had found myself. But you will. That's the message that God has for you. Is that the darkness just won't last. It's what the prophet Isaiah says. To the people who are living in the land of darkness, to the people who are desperate for hope, that are desperate for life, that are desperate that somehow their reality, that somehow that God's promise that he had given to them long before, that somehow it was going to be realized into their lives in that given moment. And they're at a point in their lives that they started to wonder if it was possible at all. It's what makes faith so hard sometimes, isn't it? I mean, if it was just so easy all of the time. And I wish I could tell you that it is, but I'm no different. That sometimes the darkness seems so real, I wonder if it's ever going to relent. But here's God's promise, is that nevertheless, that time of darkness, it's not going to last forever. Don't miss this. There are only 3 things that will last forever. Only 3. No matter how much endurance it takes, it feels like it's going to take for us to get through all of the other things. There's only 3 things. It's faith, and it's hope, and it's love. And the greatest of these is what? It's love. Because God shows up. Because the light that God has for the shepherds in this story is the same light that God has for you. The very same light. The shepherds hadn't won the lottery. The shepherds hadn't done anything special for them to be the ones that God would show up to in the middle of their darkness. And in fact, it was quite surprising. I've thought to myself so many times, if I were God, would I have done it the way that God did it? To announce the arrival of the Savior of the world. Like, who would have I shared that message with? It wouldn't have been the shepherds. Because why would God care about them? They weren't doing it right. And by all accounts, these shepherds that were watching the flocks by night, they're probably employed by another family, and they gave them the graveyard shift. And they lived their life in darkness. But that's where the light is the brightest, isn't it? I remember being in the woods that night. And I remember the voice of the one who was calling out to me. Jeremy, it's okay. I'm here. I've come. So God was saying to the shepherds when the light was so bright, it literally encompassed, it enveloped them. It drove every ounce of darkness away from them so they wouldn't even be able to remember what it was. Another thing that's remarkable for me about the shepherds is sometimes I think we fool ourselves to think that in some way that their life was going to be totally different. I have to assume that the next night, do you want to know where they probably were? Watching their flocks by night. So what changed? Well, they had experienced God's love. That they knew that when they were in the dark, they didn't go into the dark alone, and neither do you. Don't miss that. There is no place that you could ever go and be apart from the love that God has for you. Regardless of who you are, regardless of what you've done, regardless of how foolproof you think your faith must be in order for God to love you, that doesn't change His love for you. It just doesn't. It was about a year ago, right this time of year, there was a person in our church family. Her name is Jackie. Her and her husband, Drew, are friends of ours, not good friends, just they're really involved at Hope. And Jackie called me, and I was really kind of nervous. She said, I really want to meet with you. And I was nervous about it because their son, Major, was 6 years old. And Major, well, he grew up, he was born with a horrible medical condition. Some of you know really well. He was living with cystic fibrosis. Darkness was real. So I was kind of scared to meet with Jackie because I didn't know if maybe something had happened and they'd been given some bad news or something was going on with Major. And she comes into my office the next day and she shows up and she starts to get, she wasn't like all out weeping, but she starts to get really emotional. I said, hey, what's going on? And she said, Jeremy, I'm trying to figure out, Drew and I are trying to figure out, and Major is trying to figure out, how do we live life in the middle of a miracle? So what do you mean? She said, well, Major found out that he, and his type of cystic fibrosis he has, he was able to get this miracle drug that just came out. And he took it, and he still has cystic fibrosis, but his life has now changed. And we're trying to figure out, how do we make sense of that? That he's been giving something that gave him life. He's been given a gift that would take away and affect and impact that which brought death. How do you make sense of that? It's because that's who God is. And now I'm not talking about Major. I'm talking about you. 1 John chapter 4, verse 10 says, this is what love really is. This is how much God loved you. not that you first love God. Not that there's anything that you could ever do to get God to love you anymore. Not that somehow you had to do something to ignite the passion that God would have for you. But He loved you first. We didn't have, as a humanity, we didn't have to beg God to send Jesus into this world. That's just who God is, and that's what God did because He saw humanity in a place that we couldn't overcome, that which was stealing life from us. And He couldn't imagine us to live apart from Him like that. John's version of the story of Jesus starts differently than Luke's and Matthew's. John says, well, in the beginning, when God created the heavens and earth, the Word was there. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And this Word took on flesh. The infinite one, the one who hung the stars in their place, the one who was so powerful that was able to speak creation into being, that one humbled himself and took on a human form so that we could be in relationship with him. God didn't have to come into this world. God couldn't imagine not coming into this world. And this life gave light. And the light would shine in the darkness, and the darkness could never extinguish it. The light would shine in the darkness to bring good news of great joy that would be for all people. That's what the angel said to the shepherds, who couldn't reconcile the fact that God could love somebody like them, that God would choose to show up to somebody like them. And maybe you can relate to that. That maybe one of the most difficult things for you in realizing this story is, well, the way that you see yourself. And I think we really struggle with that. You say, no, Jeremy, there's a lot of people that are just so arrogant. You want to know what arrogance is? It's a cover for where we feel really weak. It's a coping mechanism. It's not who we are. And the most difficult thing for so many of us is to accept that there is a one who could love us so much that there's nothing we could do that could ever get in the way of it. Nothing. Like nothing. There is nothing you could do to make God love you anymore. So quit trying so hard. Just be you. There's nothing that you could do to make God love you any less. So quit trying so hard. Just be you. God loves you where you are for who you are. Because you were created in His image. And He couldn't imagine that eternity would exist without you. So He didn't expect you to come to Him. He came to you. And that produces a joy that trumps our circumstance. Produces a certainty and assurance that no matter what it is that feels like it's not just stealing Christmas from us, but stealing life from us, doesn't take God from us. That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown. It's about love. It's about grace. It's about forgiveness. It's about God. And it's about you. It's about hope. A hope that comes and breaks through the winter cold, the gray days that threaten to come into darkness. A hope that's born, a hope that's here, a hope that's brought to the angels, that the angels brought to the people, that the people somehow in some way have brought it to you. So in just a moment we're going to watch this video, and after that video you're going to hear and you're going to experience something that's going to probably be the best thing you'll hear all year. Soak it up. Don't miss it. It's God's gift, and it's not for everybody else but you. It's God's gift, and it's for you. Take a look.
You can feel the winter's darkness creeping in. Gray days give way to pitch black nights. The bitter cynicism of a weary world overshadows your soul. Darkness has no mercy. It has no grace. But that's what you've chosen. Your streets are lined with violence, and your children can find no peace.
Lord, have mercy.
I have nothing left. Save me from my pain. Help me.
Free me.
God, save me.
So here I stand. A fallen world below. A world looking for a savior. And I heard your cries. So I sent my son. My only son. My perfect son. Light is coming. He is coming.
Come and lay your head upon my shoulder. Look outside, the stars are shining bright. Even though it's turned a little colder, we can light a fire, stay inside. Hear the angels sing. Hear the angels sing hallelujah from above, singing peace on earth. There'll be peace on earth if we open up our hearts. Give a little love. The greatest gift is love. Gather friends and family round the table. Remember those we love no longer here. Together take a moment and be grateful for the joy, for the tears.
the greatest gift. It's love. It's love of the one who's calling your name. He's calling your name. I was in the darkness, and then the one who loved me called my name, came to me, brought light to me, illuminated the darkness that seemed like it consumed me. Much the same way that this room is going to be transformed right now. Light has a way of doing that, doesn't it? Changes everything. There's nothing that darkness can do to combat the light. It's the light that God, He brought to this world. And He's bringing it to you right now. Soak it up. It's one of the most holy and sacred moments for me every year, is what we get to do together right now. I'm so glad that I get to do it with you. Thank you. Thank you for lighting up this room for me. Because if your light wasn't here, I'd just be a little bit dimmer, wouldn't it? My goodness, this is the church. We carry this light. God gave it to you. You might say, well, I don't know how bright my light is. No, you can't make it brighter. It's God's light, it's not yours. So shine it. So as we sing this song, soak in it. See how your light connects to the lights around you as we share this moment that God has for us, that God gives to us, that His light, well, drives out the darkness. So we're going to hear it first from Mary, and then we'll sing together this incredible song, Silent Night, together. This one's for you, from God, because He loves you.
Cold are the people, winter of life. We tremble in shadows this cold, endless night. Frozen in the snow lie roses sleeping, flowers that will echo the sunrise. Fire of hope is our only warmth. Weary its flame will be dying soon.
Holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Round yon virgin, mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night. Shepherds wake at the sign. Glory stream from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from your holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, and your birth. Jesus, Lord, and your
Just sit here for a moment. There's a lot of stuff that are going to be calling for us after this moment. Be still. It's good. It's love. It's God. Don't forget it. He loves you more than anything. So go knowing that. So you can blow out your candle, but know that God's light shines you no matter where it is that you go. And just like God told it to the shepherds, he calls us to do the same thing. So you're not going to want to miss this.